Redevelopment Successor Agency and Financing Authority to order. We begin tonight as we do each week with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight will be led by, how about Ramel Carlos? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The council did meet in closed session this evening to confer with our legal counsel regarding one item of existing or exposure to litigation claimed by Kurt Ziegler. No action was taken. We don't have it's exposure, right? All right, so one item of substantial exposure to litigation. No action was taken. Brings us to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, the Council is precluded by state law from having a discussion or taking action on items that are raised by the public under item 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the Council on this or any of our other agenda items this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available towards the front door and turn it into the City Clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use, and that's the purpose of that is to make sure that everyone has a chance to be heard and that we don't meet till 2 a.m. and have folks miss putting their children to bed. Also in front of the clerk is a flip chart that indicates which item the City Council is currently considering. We do recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can present a little bit of anxiety, so we do ask that there not be any boos or catcalls or applause or other demonstrations, and that we maintain a civil discourse in the chambers. For the each of the agenda items, we take the yellow cards all the way up until the conclusion of the staff report, but once the council's discussion and the public testimony has begun, we don't take additional cards. So if you have an interest in providing comments on any of the agenda items, we'd encourage you to put the card in as soon as you can, but definitely by the end of the staff's presentation on that item. So for item 1A, we have several requests to speak this evening. The first is by Lori O'Terry, representing Viva Volunteers and Victim Assistance. Welcome.
Can I give this to you?
Sure, if you give it to the clerk, she'll distribute.
Okay.
Thanks.
My name is Lori Terry. I'm with Volunteers and Victim Assistance. I'm the outreach coordinator. On behalf of Viva, we would like to thank the City of West Sacramento, particularly Mr. Peter Hansen, who happens to be the engineering assistant for the City of West Sacramento. On October 28, 2011, I met with Mr. Hansen in discussing concerns about 5080 South River Road. It is a bypass where the two cement pylons on those pictures that you see there, where the remainder of a railroad crossing used to be, a railroad bridge there.
Mr. Terry, it might be easier, ask the clerk, since you just have single copies of these
yes,
photos.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right, but we have a, I think this works, right, Madam Clerk? Yeah, sure. We have a camera that will allow us and the public and viewers at home to be able to see, see the materials.
Great, thank you. Would you like me to continue before we get those pictures up? At least it'll...
No, she'll reset the time, so you don't need to worry about that. But
I don't know whether you can see them very... Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there you go. I've got the guy in the back. There we go.
Okay.
It's just happening magically.
Need the lights off right there above the big camera. Thank you.
No, I did that.
This section is commonly known as Peacock Corner or Peacock Curve. It's on the south end of South River Road, just as you go up onto the levee. Anyway, I met with Mr. Hansen, and because we had had so many numerous accidents out there of either people going off of the levee road into the river, running into the cement pylons, coming both directions, or just simply not making that curve. Mr. Hansen had recommended that the city of West Sacramento could possibly put up some signs and speed bumps, road signs of wildlife because of the peacocks there, glow strips on the wall, sand or water barriers, or maybe even a blinking light. After having this discussion with him, he went ahead and put up signs. He put up arrows, great big huge arrows, some little kind of bumps in the road there, and some other obstacles so that people would get an idea what was going on right there, to have people slow down. In the process of doing my research, Elaine Carlton with the West Sacramento PD had collected status information for me and found that in that time there was like 18 crashes there. And Vicki Siley from the West Sacramento Fire Department also did research concerning that, and there was 11 crashes there. Out of that, we had 22 crashes, and 2 of them I could see that were overlapped. I was not able to get the Sheriff's Department or the CHP's stats on that, but there is a grand total of 19 between the 3 of us that we had added up, and 8 fatalities that went there. So I don't know how the rest of West Sacramento is doing, but that is a definite problem area. And I have to thank, again, Mr. Hansen for taking the initiative, trimming the trees, putting in the signs, and helping out with the notification there. And the 3.5 years, or 2.5 years since I've moved here, we've had 4 accidents that I know of. One where a van didn't quite make it through that loop and went over and into the river, and that was a fatality. In May, we had a motorcycle that hit there. That was a fatality. In August of last year, we had another fatality of a car that went into, and that's the one that's on this right here, and that was a fatality. And then there was another one where a woman went off and missed the pylon, but ended up over on the other side of the pylon. So,
Mr. I do need to ask you to wrap.
So I want to just thank you.
Point.
Thank you very much, West Sacramento, for taking the initiative, and thank you to the West Sacramento PD, the West Sacramento Fire Department, and the Engineering Department for taking the initiative to try to resolve this problem. And we thank you.
All right, thank you. And we count on citizens in the community to raise these issues and then to work directly with the team here at the city. So we appreciate your continued engagement and vigilance as well.
Yes. And we have put a notification in the newspaper for both of you so that the rest of the public can know that what a great job you guys are doing. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Don Bosley, Lighthouse Covenant Church and the Homeless Solutions Committee.
Good evening, Council.
Give him a little bit more time. I mean, that was a great summary, but a little bit more.
Rolling. Thanks for giving me a moment this evening. I'm Don Bosley from the Lighthouse Covenant Church, the senior pastor there, and as all of you know, the former director and co-founder of the Callings Teen Center. It was about 15 years ago that my wife Melody and I began knocking on all of your doors, talking to you about a teen center. All of you sitting here have eaten our rubber chicken and sat at our crab feeds as we saw that thing come to fruition. And the teen center dream and vision began in one place, but it began to tip and take traction when suddenly the very unique collaborative spirit that is West Sacramento began to take over, and suddenly, instead of viewing it as a potential place where we could take troubled kids and stick them, there became a vision that was shared by many people about engaging and empowering kids. And the city got involved, and the community got involved, and business got involved. 15 years later, we're here, and we have, similarly, we stand at a moment in time where we have a marginalized people group that we have the opportunity to serve, and that is the homeless of our community. all aware of the Broderick Christian Center's burning down a year and a half ago. Unfortunate as that was, is becoming clearer that we have a moment in time to be able to set into motion a plan that will not only remove the public blight that some people view the homeless as being, not only clear the way for the development that their encampment is kind of problematic for, but actually serve them, empower them. There are models out there that are being embraced and put before with the Homeless Solutions Committee that Councilman Johannesson has begun to put together. There are real solutions there, and we're really excited about what this can be. I'm here to encourage you. I know that all of you are going to consider soon what your priorities will be for 2012. I understand there's a retreat coming up to consider these kind of things, and I would ask you to give deep consideration to what we can do. The measurement of a city, very, very much, is how it cares for its weakest members, its most marginalized members. I grew up here, and this city has grown up to be a place that does care for those. The Teen Center and other entities are more than evidence of that. This is our moment in time to really consider that. You've got faith community, shelters, agency workers ready to come along beside and see how can we help you do this. But I encourage you to consider that as your priorities for 2012. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Don. All right, Romel and Malu Carlos.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. I'm Mary Lou Verder Carlos, and my husband Romel's going to tag team with me on this one. We are 22-year residents of West Sacramento, and we appreciate all the improvements that we've had through this 22 years we've been here, and especially in the past decade under your leadership. We also appreciate that in order to keep the image of the city, we have to have enforcement codes set. And however, as someone, as our business, we have a small business, Liberty Tax Service, and a seasonal business as that, we are concerned about the consistent enforcement of the codes that in the city. And so I'm gonna have him.
Well, I got a letter yesterday from the city. It says notice to abate. Oh, I thought I'm gonna get a rebate from the city, but I realized that I'm in violation of some codes. Well, anyway, there were three things that they wanted me to remove or apply a permit for. One is the A-frame sign that I put on the sidewalk. My sidewalk is 20 feet long, and it says there that it's impeding the traffic or something. But you know, this is very small. The sidewalk's 20 feet long. Red box is occupying a lot more space than that A-frame, and it's actually closer to my building. One of the A-frames, in fact, that I noticed that was allowed to be in the city was tied to a traffic pole over there at Merkley Avenue. So that's one of the concerns. They also wanted me to remove a banner that's 3 by 10 feet. It reads friendly, accurate, guaranteed. And my concern is if I don't have the sign, people will not know that I provide friendly, accurate, and guaranteed service. If you notice, the repair shops, the repair facilities, they have this type of banners in every bay. If you go all around the city, it's everywhere, a 3 by 10 sign. And mine is clean and brand new. I mean, it doesn't look bad. Another of the item that they wanted me to remove is a fan-powered balloon. You know, I realize that I may need to get a permit for that, but what I'm asking for is the consistency of enforcement. Because the day that I was visited and was asked that it's in violation, I went over next door to my neighbor, and they also have the same thing, and they said they didn't get anything, and it's been going on. They've had it for years. So I'm wondering why me? You know, my stuff is brand new, my signs are clean, everything is symmetrical. So that's my real concern. You know, in business, signs are essential. That's the way we communicate to our customers what we do. Well, therefore, to close this, because I'm out of time, what I'm asking for the city to do, if possible, is to postpone the enforcement, because I have until March 2nd, is for the city to postpone enforcement of this code until the city can come up with a uniform way to enforce these codes. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Planning to say something, or you looked like you were? Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, I also have received concerns, and I know the area that was just referenced, and I'm wondering if there's some way in which, and I know that Ms. Hamilton is very good at helping out small businesses that show up here with these kinds of similar concerns. I'm wondering if we can't have some dialogue to figure out a way to resolve the issue, because I know it's an ongoing issue. It's a difficult one. That the sign ordinance issue has been one that we've grappled with for many, many years, and so I certainly don't want the small business person to be, you know, the result of unintended consequences of what I think is a good policy, but it's its application and the unintended consequences that I'm concerned about. So it'd be helpful if we could get a report back on how we might be able to figure out a way to work with small businesses here.
Sure. Great, thanks.
One of the other things that, excuse me. One of the other things that we may look at are timelines. I mean, their business is April 15th, and so, you know, I mean, I just wonder if there's some things Charlene can look at that may ease the, whatever it is.
There are some temporary sign provisions related to
Right.
Short-term duration. Generally, you see those with grand openings or special seasonal
Right.
efforts, and I think we can have a conversation with the business owner and discuss what those options are. I think at this point, just code enforcement has identified the problem, and a conversation with the community development staff will probably lead to a solution, and we can report back.
Great, thank you.
All right, Lynn Phelps?
Good evening and thank you. I'm here this evening, my first time at City Council, speaking in regards to the homeless people. You know, a shelter for the homeless is something I would really like to see in West Sacramento. I myself am unemployed. I have been ever since Tower Records went out of business. I worked there 16 years. As a 54-year-old adult, I have a hard time finding anybody that wants to hire me to do anything. But I spend my free time, which I have way too much of, gathering goods, tarps, clothing, food, excuse me, from friends and neighbors to take to the boat ramp, to take to other places I know that the homeless gather, to try to help them, to help feed them. One of the concerns I have is also for myself. My partner is the only income that comes into our home. If something were to happen to her and I too was homeless, I wonder would I have to be on the river as well and be pushed to side. And what my question is to all of you this evening is, are you really aware of how many homeless people that we really have in West Sacramento? Are you aware that they're not all drunks and drug addicts? They're regular people like you and I, and have lost their homes or lost their families or lost their way for one reason or another. And I speak tonight on behalf of them in hopes that we might be able to treat all of ourselves as human beings, you know, and to do something for them, to build a roof to put over their head. I'm sure there has to be an empty building that's not in use, schools, something, some room or something that can be built. As I said, I have time on my hand. I'd be more than willing to volunteer my time to work there, to help, to do something with a wonderful organization that's helping the homeless people. In my heart, we're all humans, we're all regular people, and I think that we all deserve a chance to be rehabilitated, to learn how to take care of ourselves. If they were somebody with money and could go into a rehab center or, I don't know, have other options that are given to people that have a lot of income, maybe they might not be where they are today. I don't know if any of you have ever gone down to the boat ramp or talked to these people or met the teenagers the pregnant women, the elderly people, the veterans, people that served our country and for one reason or another have found themselves wayward and living on the ground where they're constantly forced to move and hide. And I understand that because I've been out there to feed them, to meet them, to see where they sleep. And I understand they don't all keep their camps clean and they aren't as tidy as we might like them to be. But I really feel that with one shelter, 2 shelters, a roof over their head, and good people like myself or like yourself to guide and help rebuild them, that we could make this town and those people better. Now, thank you for listening. I hope we can do something.
Ms. Phelps, thank you for coming tonight and for sharing that. It's very powerful. All right, so we don't have a homeless item on the agenda this evening, and I think as Mr. Bosley mentioned, the City Council will be holding its annual strategic priorities session in a week from now, where I know this is going to be one of the topics that's before us, as well as our countywide collaboration that Mr. Johannes and Ms. Collis and others within the city are working on as well. But appreciate you being here this evening. And Bill Lowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. William Lowell of West Sacramento for the record. I'm hearing discussion about money that's proposed to be used for helping the homeless versus whatever else, and there seems to be some controversy. I'm surprised we didn't have a special agenda item under that, but the thought comes to me, I'm still thinking about unmet public transit needs that allow people, jobless people, to get to those unfulfilled jobs, like over in the port area, middle day jobs, off hours jobs, and more people that get matched up with those jobs. Why, the fewer jobless we have and the less crime we would have, it would seem. So, and of course, 2 weeks from now in Davis City Hall at 7 o'clock, we will have the Yolo County Unmet Public Transit Needs hearing. So that's for all of Yolo County. And finally, I was wondering about when South River Road is going to be widened, or the completion will take place, so that during the morning hours, I take a 39 off of 15th Street and down Jefferson, and all of a sudden, sometimes the traffic is all the way backed up to Drever Street, and I was wondering when the car traffic can go to South River Road and take the steeper roadway to get up to the Pioneer Bridge. I wouldn't recommend it for buses or other longer vehicles, but overall, it would seem to cause the flow of traffic to be much better than it's doing now. So I'll let it go at that now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lowell. All right, those are all of our requests on item 1A, so we're going to proceed to item 1B, which is council communications. Are there any reports or other communications this evening? Mr. Kristoff.
Yes, last Thursday, the Water JPA met. We're narrowing things down to really sort of 2 alternatives, and the costs of those alternatives and the cost sharing of those alternatives. Mr. Panos reported on his and the mayor's trip to Washington, D.C., and talked about FEMA, and had a lot of good things to say about the efforts that are being made by the city of West Sacramento for flood protection, for the possibility of, in essence, sort of keeping FEMA away from a remapping process for a couple more years. And I mean, eventually FEMA's, they're going to remap. but hopefully we can get the repairs necessary that we need to take care of so that we receive a beneficial and a very good rating as far as FEMA is concerned, so that our insurance rates really don't go through the roof. That's really the essence of what was discussed, and we do have a very, very important meeting coming up the first Thursday of next month. I believe we will be making a decision on what alternative we are really going to pursue, and within choosing of those particular alternatives, I think that there always remains the possibility of making some tweaks to it, because it's only 15% design, and we need to get to 60% design. But by getting from 15 to 60, we may be able to make some tweaks and help out some of the property owners out there, especially on the Sac River site, and some of the property owners. So that Thursday meeting will be a very important meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kristoff. Other reports or communications? Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On, let's see, February 6th, the city school 2x2 met, and just a couple things I wanted to let the council know. The Yolo County Children's Alliance applied for and was successful in receiving a $150,000 Kaiser Heal grant. This grant was in partnership with the Washington Unified School District to basically provide a healthy eating, active living site at the Westfield School. It's one of our school sites that we have sort of adopted as a park, but it doesn't have sort of the utility that we'd like our parks to have. So, in part with what I think the council will recall about a year ago or so, Familias Unidas, who came out here to request our support and assistance in turning it into a park. That spurred interest in applying for this grant. We were successful, so now here we are. And over the course of the next 2 years, we'll utilize $150,000 of this grant to provide a playground, walking trails, plant some trees, and offer some services at the Westfield School for folks who utilize that location as their primary park in the community. So that was the main item that was discussed that evening. And then a couple other meetings, jump forward to the most recent Yolo County Transportation District meeting, and I think the council reported on, I think Councilmember Ledesma reported on the most recent streetcar committee meeting, and what we did on Monday evening at the Transportation District was more formalize the resolution that authorizes the district to apply for Federal Transit Administration funds to perform an alternative analysis, which is required for moving forward with our streetcar project in order to apply for additional funds. So we formalized that step at the district level for us to apply for I think it's 1.2 million, roughly $1.2 million is going to become available. And so a lot of the work's already been done, but that's going to put us in a much better position as we move forward on that front. And then earlier today, the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority met, and I'm always fascinated by these meetings. It's amazing how successful that system is that provides rail service in our region. It's the one that most people are familiar with, the Amtrak system that moves folks from our community to the Bay Area and back and forth. We received an update on the business plan, the capital improvement plan, and then also we adopted some principles for the bike policy, because the ridership has just really continued to grow every day. So we're sort of a victim of our own success here, and the number of folks that are using our system and are bringing their bikes is now causing some safety issues. We have some federal laws we have to comply with. So we adopted some principles that's going to allow us to move forward and continue to support folks that are using their bikes to get to the train and then using the train to get to and from work. But again, the numbers are up. They continue to grow from last year, from last month. They continue to grow. People are very, very satisfied with the service, and it's on-time performance. The new Wi-Fi system that's available for those that utilize the Amtrak all signs are thumbs up on so many different fronts, but you can tell that the managing director, Mr. Kutrowski, is very excited about bringing us this information. So good stuff happening there. And then this evening, the executive board of the Universal Preschool met. A couple things to note, one of which is we have continued to put ourselves in a very good position to apply for First Five funds. An RFP is going to be released any day now. And again, because of the work that we've done as a model, POP program, we are going to be in a very good position, we believe, to apply for additional funding to grow and expand our program. And so we're very excited about that. And then we're also going to be opening up on Saturday, March 10th. I think there's may have been a notice provided to the council, but we'll have our ribbon cutting for our preschool program across the street at the community center. We actually met there this evening, and it is a beautiful facility that we have put across the street. So it's not open quite yet, but we're interviewing for teachers, and we're very excited about the prospects of what's to come there. So March 10th, if you put that in your calendar at 1:30, we're going to be doing our official ribbon cutting for what is a long-awaited preschool program across the street. I believe that is it.
Two reports. The Delta Protection Commission met at the end of last month, and we gave, I want to say final approval, but this is the third time we've given final approval to the Economic Sustainability Plan. It's gone through a couple of post-final approval amendments, and this is the core document that the Delta Protection Commission's responsibilities under this new constellation with the Stewardship Council are to continue to do the Delta Land Use Resource Management Plan, but the other is this Economic Sustainability Plan, which I think when we started it, there was an expectation that what we were going to do was going to say, Clarksburg should have, somewhere to buy groceries, right? We were going to really focus on kind of micro level issues in the Delta, particularly in the primary zone and in the legacy communities. But I have to say, although I was skeptical at the beginning, the final product on the Economic Sustainability Plan is very good, and it's quite comprehensive, and it covers a lot of things. In part is in an effort for the local communities in the Delta, which comprise a majority of the commission, to lay down some markers on some key issues for the Delta Stewardship Council. So there is a lot of the economic issues that would be obvious around the maintenance of certain kind of core services, populations, and what have you in those legacy towns like Clarksburg and Walnut Grove and others. But also, this plan does a good job of deconstructing some of DWR's work on levees and the cost of and benefits of doing major levee improvements throughout the Delta, including in the urban levee system, and incorporates virtually all of the recommendations that we had proposed for that plan, with one or two minor exceptions, but given where we were a year ago, it's significantly improved. We were able to accomplish that through a lot of collaboration with Yolo County and with the coalition of the 5 Delta counties, both at the commission level and then our staff. Mr. Panos and his team have been working closely with Yolo County and their staff as well on some of these issues. And so I think the Economic Sustainability Plan is actually a pretty good product. It was adopted not unanimously. The state agencies that serve on that are represented on the commission abstained, but they do that all the time. So they weren't opposed to it necessarily, although I know they had some concerns about some of the provisions around flood protection. But the core land use wars have been resolved at the commission level. Now there's still the Delta Stewardship Council issues, the Eisenberg Pat Johnson Council, which was meeting here last week downstairs, and they have moved off a little bit of their notion that every action that any public or agency or any private citizen takes anywhere in all of California and parts of Mexico is subject to their review and approval. They've moved off to some extent, but it's still not exactly clear what the whole covered actions, how that piece is going to completely shake out, or as the Stewardship Council's own plan has to come to finality fairly shortly. But as a result of that ambiguity, we're not really in a problem. We don't have the problem in any serious way that we were concerned about, that we would have a hardcore Delta plan from the Stewardship Council at the same time which we did not have a regional metropolitan transportation plan and sustainable communities plan, which gives us the option to be exempt from some of the Stewardship Council review, that we don't seem to have any, we're in that stage right now. We don't appear to have any major flashpoints at the moment, largely because there's not the economic activity that would be generating permit applications and planning requests that might have otherwise put that in jeopardy. So that plan now goes to the Delta Stewardship Council for their review and their concurrence. That I was at the winter meeting of the U.S. Conference of Mayors last month. I traveled to Washington, D.C., and in addition to the meeting itself, met with Secretary LaHood, the Secretary of Transportation, and we were fortunate to get fortunate and lucky to get a meeting with just me and the Secretary of Transportation and the Deputy Secretary of Transportation and two of their assistant secretaries. That was supposed to be me and Mayor Johnson. Mayor Johnson was detained by his city council and was unable to be there. So I got 45 minutes with the Secretary of Transportation to talk about the streetcar project. I also did talk about the intermodal facility at the rail yards on behalf of the city of Sacramento. So I mean, we definitely had focused attention by the highest level of leadership in the federal government around transportation funding, and we could have a frank conversation about, exactly what our prospects were, what our strategy ought to be, what some of our challenges are, and so we are using that information to inform the shape of which whether or not to apply for Tiger or in other programs, and in what time frame, and what that would look like, and how to be more competitive on the streetcar in future applications. The Secretary was back in California, back in our region last week, around the same time as the Nippon Shoken opening, so we weren't able to participate, but he was at the intermodal facility as well, so that was positive. I also had an opportunity to meet with the Secretary of Education and to talk to him about No Child Left Behind and the potential for the Department of Education to grant waivers to districts. The Secretary has had some, is indicated in the past he would be open. Oh, let me take a step back. So No Child Left Behind includes a series of accountability measures which can be problematic for a lot of schools, including our own. So last year we had we had the largest amount of growth on academic performance in the Washington Unified School District in the whole region on the state's assessments. So the district is seen by the state as a high performer. The challenge at the federal level is because of the way that the federal government looks at subpopulations within that. You can have a high-performing school, but if you have a small subgroup, so you have a small number of disabled Latino kids, and their scores don't rise at the same rate, you could still have the same. You could be sanctioned essentially by the federal government. So there's been a lot of interest in recent years in tweaking and fixing those mechanisms in No Child Left Behind. The Secretary of Education earlier in the year allowed states to apply for waivers from that if they propose some alternative. California declined to apply, which leaves our districts, and 10 states did apply and were given waivers. So I had been asking the Secretary in the fall whether or not he would be open to allowing local districts, and since the Secretary is a big fan of mayoral leadership in schools, that if local districts and their partner mayors were to jointly apply, would he consider opening up waivers at the district level? So that just as an example, in our case, Washington, if Washington Unified School District and I co-signed an application, would he be open to that concept? He had said in the fall that he was. And so we had a half hour with him in January to talk that further, and he indicated that is going to be their plan, that in the next round of waiver invitations, which will occur in the summer, that they will be making an invitation at the district level for districts that have a sign-off or some other evidence of collaboration with their I think the federal government's term is the chief municipal officer. So that's positive as well. I mean, the challenge I think for California overall is the vast majority of schools are likely to be categorized as failing schools, and many of them are. And the problem with over-categorizing is that you can't focus on the schools that need your attention. If you have defined 80% of them as failing, you're missing the ones that really are. And so the point of coming up with a waiver is to be able to get the ability to come up with an alternative system that really allows you to focus in on those schools that really need the additional accountability and assistance. So that's positive, and we'll be following up with the Department of Education on that. I did go to the White House again, but we didn't meet, and we heard from the president, but he didn't take a lot of questions. So I did not get the president of the United States to weigh in on the streetcar or the channel deepening. But Mr. Panelson, Mr. Lucan, and I did go to the Pentagon and met with the Corps, the leadership of the Civil Works Division of the Corps, and the Assistant Secretary's office, principally around the whole issue of our ability to get credit for investments that we and the state of California make in the levee system in advance of having an authorized federal project. And Council's well aware, I think that we had been proceeding on that basis because it's been the established federal practice for some time. And then last year, on the same day that we put in one of our, a small but not trivial request to actually do that on one of our levee projects at the federal government, that same day announced, the Secretary of the Army, Assistant Secretary of the Army announced that they were changing the policy to no longer grant that credit. It's some major implications for us since we are front-loading most of our local spending in advance of federal authorization on the project. So we met with the Corps' leadership about that to help them understand the problems and ways that might be solved that would accommodate communities like ours, because we understand that there are some other places in the country that may have abused the crediting process, and some of those places might be within 45 minutes of West Sacramento. And so we understood that the challenges that they're dealing with, but that we wanted also them to understand that it's not a good idea. The federal government will end up having to pick up a much larger share of the tab if local communities don't make these kind of investments. And so it's a smart fiscal proposition for the feds to deal with that as well. So we got a good audience with them, and they were attempting to be helpful. I don't know that their specific solution that they outlined in that meeting is going to help us, but I think there's a clear understanding about a couple of things. One is that West Sac is doing the right thing, and that they want to encourage and support what we're doing, and to have that support from the Pentagon is helpful for a little city. But second, that they understand that they need to that some change to this policy needs to happen, and so our team is following up on this because there's a lot of moving parts here. But it was a positive meeting in the sense that they understood what our needs are and want to see it solved. Whether the specific solution that was pending on that day will work for us is still another question. We did also meet with FEMA about the mapping process and our ongoing issues around that, and about the potential changes to the way that they define the zones, the flood zones, that would have impact for us and that could be helpful to us in the event that we were mapped. That was a positive conversation as well. I did have a chance to have a brief conversation with the Assistant Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security, which includes FEMA, and then at the White House for like 3 minutes with the Secretary of Homeland Security about the same topic, just to get them up to speed on it. And frankly, at the Secretary's office, they're just not aware of most of what FEMA is doing, it sounds like. So getting on their radar screen was important, but I think we're at the early stages of them. They will ultimately need to sign off at the agency level if FEMA formally proposes changes to the flood zone. So the opening of that dialogue with the Secretary's office, and I had asked a couple of the other mayors who were meeting also with the Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security to make the same case so that they could see some national interest in this. And so Des Moines and Dallas and a few other mayors were underscoring the need for this as well. So that was positive. We did also meet with Senator Feinstein's office, Boxer's office, Matsui's office, Congressmember Matsui's office, Thompson's office, Skloski, the ranking member of the House subcommittee that handles the transportation infrastructure issues. So it was and I think I was there for like 4 hours, so it was a jam-packed session, but very productive. And I think, several of the members of the council will be going back for cap to cap, and there'll be some follow-ups as well. But I wanted to provide as complete update as possible because there were a lot of key issues. We did also, in a lot of the meetings on the Hill, we talked about the port channel deepening. I didn't mention that in this summary, but that was also a key topic because we want to sustain the federal appropriations to keep that project moving as well. So. All right, now that I've been talking for an hour and my voice is almost gone, let's proceed to item 1C, which is council appointments to boards and commissions. I don't have an appointment to the Commission on Aging this evening. For the Yolo County Housing Authority, the formal appointment to the authorities, I should backtrack for a second. The Board of Supervisors has last year approved an ordinance that revises the structure of the Yolo County Housing Authority, the authority being the the quasi-independent governmental entity that operates housing projects in the county, including some here. So they've formed a new governance structure for that includes representatives from each of the cities. Those representatives are formally appointed by the Board of Supervisors, but each of the cities is asked to submit a nomination. So it is my intention to submit on behalf of our city, the Councilmember Johannesson as our nominee. And rather than worry about what is legally required, I'm going to ask if there's concurrence from the council to do so, even though we're not actually making the appointment. The county's making the appointment.
Bless the appointment.
All right, okay. So without objection, that'll be the order. All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. Items 2 through 6. Are there any items any member of the council wishes to remove, or any item for questions or comments? All right, then is there a motion?
Move consent.
Okay, Mr. Christoph has moved, and Mr. Johannesson has seconded the consent agenda. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And I just is Ms. Hamilton back? Just for the business license item, yesterday a constituent, this is not a question, but yesterday a constituent said she had gone into the business license shop and talked to Kathy and had the most amazing service ever. She was thrilled. She's a very tough customer, and she just happens to have been appointed the new Commissioner of Corporations for California by the governor. And apparently she said the same thing to Mayor Pro Tem Villegas. So that she's a very tough customer, and she was absolutely thrilled and wanted to make sure the whole world knew what a great job that that Kathy at the counter had been doing, and that your shop was doing. So, kudos. All right, the hour of 7:30 having arrived, we'll proceed to our time-set agenda. Item 7 is a public hearing and first reading of ordinance 12-4, adding section 8.44 to the municipal code regarding the regulation of unattended donation boxes. Ms. Hamilton.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Cabaldon and members of the City Council. It's been a while since I've been here. The city supports charities and the work that they do for the community. The unattended donation box is a recent collection technique that is being used by charities to receive donated goods. The intent of the proposed ordinance is to regulate the placement, the operation, and the maintenance of these boxes. This draft is similar to ordinances that have been adopted in other cities in the region. The key provisions of the proposed ordinance include a permit that would be required for unattended donation boxes. Secondly, the property owner seeking a permit for a donation box must provide documentation that the entity operating the box is a charitable organization. Thirdly, the box must be maintained in good condition and appearance, and the area around the box must be also free of junk, garbage, and trash. Only one box may be placed on a lot in space 400 feet from any other donation box. And lastly, the boxes would not be allowed in residential zones. Staff is recommending that the City Council conduct the public hearing on the proposed ordinance, waive the first reading and read by title and number only, ordinance 12-4, and inform the audience that the second reading and adoption of the ordinance is scheduled for March 7th.
All right. Are there questions? We have before we open the public hearing? Mr. Johannesson.
Yes, Sandra, what problems have we had with these? I wasn't aware that,
Thus far, we have not, code enforcement has not received any complaints regarding donation boxes. But there has been a proliferation of them, not only we've seen a number of them in the city, but also in the region. And in the other cities, they have noted that they have been placed on property without property owner's consent. That's been a concern. And there's also been a concern about them being used by, I'll say, illegitimate charities who are really they're for-profit rather than non-profit. So that has been the issue.
That's been happening here or just in other jurisdictions?
Other jurisdictions, to my knowledge. Yes.
Okay.
All right, then with that, we're going to open the public hearing on this item, and we have a couple of requests to speak. The first is Bill Lowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. William Lowell, West Sacramento, again for the record. Over the years, I guess I've been a little too generous with solicitations for donations, and over the years, I think I've donated a little too much, and during that time, gradually, I hear of a bigger and bigger percentage of the donations going to the fundraisers, and a smaller and smaller percentage actually going to the stated cause. So I think there ought to be a rule that each so-called nonprofit organization, when they're soliciting donations, they should say what percentage of their overall donations went to the stated cause last year, and how much went to administration and so forth. But I wonder too, how many of these major nonprofit organizations, they come to maybe the last month or last quarter, whatever it is, and it looks like they're going to show a profit, so they declare a big bonus to those who run the organizations, and suddenly what would be a profit becomes a loss. And that's, I think the old name for that is called juggling the books, among other things. And so I think there ought to be something in the law that says at the end of the year, how much went to the stated cause and how much went for these other things other than the stated cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowell. And Juan Ramazzini, on behalf of Gaia Movement USA.
Good evening, and thank you for. This morning, so I came over rushing pretty much. First of all, I'd like to say that the corporation I represent, which is Gaia, it is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3, and we're based in Sacramento and Fresno. I also am primarily responsible, perhaps, for the growth we have had in the last year, and therefore the bins, we don't call them bins, we call them donation boxes, that you see all over, we have expanded in a way. We cover from Fresno all the way up to Redding, and we have a logistics that services those donation boxes 3 times a week, minimum. Whereas around Sacramento, West Sacramento, we service them on a daily basis. So they're basically not unattended. We are looking at them every day, and we check for graffiti. Our chauffeurs in the trucks, they have paint, so they can paint them immediately if they see graffiti. If the stickers are dirty or whatever, we change them, and we pick up, of course, the used clothing. Now, in a response to the gentleman's observation, which is really good, we have partnered with the Sacramento School County, and 1/3 of the generated funds that are being derived from the used clothing and the used shoes is going into Sacramento schools. Our kids and our schools. So it seems like we're trying to, on our side, we're really trying to get funds so we can help the schools reduce somehow the budget cuts they've been experiencing in the last couple of years. We have no problem with the ordinance being, some ordinance regulating our boxes, except for point number 1, where we are required to have the owner petition the application. That practically will kill our business. It is hard enough, it is tough to get out there and get the local and regional businesses to come with us so we can get some funds for the schools, while pretending them to sign the application, it's almost impossible. That will actually kill us. Everything else in the ordinance, we're perfectly with it. We do not reject that. And of course, if money-wise the application can be, a reasonable amount. Another 1/3 of the cost, to give you an idea of all the generated funds, 1/3 goes to our logistics, cost of operation, 1/3 goes to Sacramento schools, and 1/3 goes to international programs in Africa and Asia. At this moment, I'm out of time, so I thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas, do you have a question?
Yes, I actually did have a question. So how many boxes are there in West Sacramento, do you know?
West Sacramento, we don't have that many. We have 11 donation boxes.
11 boxes. And so you're 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So what percent of the funds that are generated, let's just say from the boxes that are in West Sacramento, go to the schools in West Sacramento?
Well, at this particular moment, we started the program with the school last October, and the pilot school district is Twin Rivers. Together with Sue Stickle at the superintendency level of Sacramento County, we are getting into West Sacramento this year, hopefully. So as soon as that takes place, we'll be placing, hopefully, many more donation boxes so we can get, more generated funds for the schools.
And are you generating a lot of donations with the 11 boxes that you have right now?
We are. It's interestingly enough, this is garbage that otherwise will not come into these bins, will go into the landfills and will produce CO2.
Or it might be donated to other organizations.
But altogether, the Textile Guild, for example, has information that in California, 1.25 billion pounds of used clothing get disposed of every year. Together with all the major competitors like Goodwill or Salvation Army, we don't even cover 15% of what goes into landfills.
And so for the 11 locations that are in West Sacramento, you have permission by the property owners to put those boxes on that location?
Yes.
Okay.
We have in file, we have every application and every solicitation we do by the property owner or by the manager of the store. What happens is that in many of these small businesses, they're absentee owners. So we deal with the managers.
Got it. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So I had a couple of questions too. So all of the cities to the east of us have adopted this same ordinance? Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, Folsom, the city of Sacramento, and the county of Sacramento. So the rest of the urban core all has the same ordinance, including the property owner provision.
That is correct. We are trying to fight that ordinance with that particular point.
In all the cities which have already adopted it?
Yes, Rancho Cordova, Folsom, and Sacramento County and Sacramento itself.
So but they're adopted already. So are you suing them or?
No.
So
no, we're not in a position to sue.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do is appeal and letting you know what we're doing with the funds, where the funds are going, so that you can help us out instead of really, pushing us out of the business. What we need from you is assistance so we can grow more. There's 28 people working in the corporation already, and as we're growing, we plan to have 50 by year end. So we're employing personnel also as well. This is an ongoing business.
Yeah. Do you know? I know I'm sure you're familiar with the 2004 investigative piece that the Chicago Tribune did on Gaia generally, and then the rash of ordinances similar to this in Chicago, in Indianapolis, and other places across the country around. I think the issues essentially that Mr. Lowell raised, which was very little of the funds were going to charity, and then I think my understanding is from the mayor of Indianapolis that even several years after that 2004 study, that I think they calculated $25 million in revenue from the textile resales, with according to the federal tax forms, $12,000 of the $25 million going to charitable purposes. Can you? I know you're familiar with these issues.
I can just say the following. Based on Gaia, I've been with Gaia for a year now, and our main objectives in California are twofold. Help the school system get as much funds as possible. 1/3 of the generated funds goes to it. And number two, the other third goes to international projects in India and Africa. Now, we are a very small corporation. We have 700 bins, 700 donation boxes. What we generate out of them is, little money compared to other corporations. I know about the 2004 issue, but that was just a publication which has never been proven. And I think there's a lot of politics behind that that I, wouldn't be willing to talk about it right now.
Yeah, but the 2007 information or the indictment and the conviction of the parent company
We don't have a parent.
executives by
We
by the
don't have a
Danish
parent
government?
company. Gaia is a U.S. corporation, bases in California, and we don't have a parent company.
Yeah, let me ask one other thing about this, which is the American Institute for Philanthropy, which rates charities based on this specific issue of does the money actually reach a charitable purpose, has given Gaia an F for the last 6 straight years. They're the only independent. They're the only ones that independently rate this. Have you seen their rank?
Yes, I saw it before. The cost of raising funds is very large, especially when raising funds in bins. It becomes a very costly operation. By having the schools and having their partnership, we are really getting much more, larger amounts of clothing. Thereby, the cost has come down. So this year should be a much different picture in regards to the percentages. Okay, we should be a very efficient corporation, lowering our cost to 34%, which is reasonable. And then everything else, generated funds, being implemented into actual, charities.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr.
One-
Kristoff.
One question, excuse me, yeah. One question that I have, and that is, what was the amount that went to the Sacramento schools?
When? So-
1/3, last year?
Well, last year we just started the program. If you were able to see the document here, I had the partnership endorsement by Twin Rivers. That was issued October 28th of last year. We actually didn't get to start the program until middle of January. So the first checks are going to be cut in February, and they're going to be given to the schools. They have a Project Dream, which is a fantastic nonprofit also that they carry with students, and most of the funds are going to be going to Project Dream, but there's also some high schools which want their money directly to them.
Yeah.
So we'll be cutting checks as of first week of February, but this is a brand new program.
Okay.
We just started with it.
And do you have any, an estimated guess about what your check in February is going to
I
be?
can estimate in 6 months from now, February is going to be very low because we just placed 120 new bins for the school purposes. But for example, to give you an idea, we project that within 6 months, we should be helping the school system with around $8,000 to $10,000 a week.
Very good.
Okay, so the more we are able to do, the more we'll be able to contribute. The partnership is clear, is open, our books are there, and if you go into our web, you can see the whole school program, how many pounds are being picked up by every bin. We're able to geographically see where each bin is. Okay, so that and the school has access to that also as well, so they know how much each bin is producing.
And what makes the different points here that the ordinance addresses, what makes number 1 so difficult to obtain?
Okay.
Because this is property owners,
Let me give you an
it's
idea.
their property.
Let me give you an idea. I have been doing this legwork from store to store, from business to business, okay? Most of the local businesses, a lot of them small businesses, they want to help us, but the owner is an absentee owner. They own the store, but they're never there. The manager is the one that really runs the store. That's number 1. When you go into regional businesses, like for example, we're trying to incorporate Rayleigh supermarkets, 99% of their stores are lease. They don't own them. So for them to go actually into the owners and, throw this on the table and try to get them to sign, it's going to be almost impossible. It's an issue that it just won't happen. They don't want to buy with that. The owner is probably in Switzerland or God knows where. It's going to be very difficult. Now, if we can work some other ways to do that, instead of having the owner, we as a corporation apply for it with the owner's permission, with the manager's permission, that will really help us out. All
Yeah, but
other
the managers change in a store.
Exactly.
They change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That will help us habilitate, comply with the ordinance, which we have no problem with, and get us moving so the business can grow and help out the school system.
Can I ask you about the school? So if at $10,000 a month, which was the upper range of what
That's
you said.
our projection
So
for the
$120,000, which is a third, which would be the same as the amount that would be going to international environmental causes.
That's correct.
Which would be the same as the amount that would be retained by Gaia to do all of this. It seemed $120,000 to install, maintain, collect, monitor, come to council meetings for the entire network of Sacramento County and West Sacramento boxes in the number of the hundred seems astonishingly low.
We can supply you with a projected logistic cost, if you like, detail. I don't have all details, as I mentioned at the beginning. I came rushing by because I saw this on the last minute basis, but we can supply you with a projected cost, logistic cost, and so on, and show you the truth, where the money is going to, or will be going to.
So, but you can
Regularly
monitor
just the cost
hundreds of boxes.
Just the cost of each box, to give you an idea, comes close to $700. If you multiply 100 boxes by 700, you get $70,000 just right there, invested.
Yeah, no, I'm asking the opposite question. I'm not saying $120,000 seems like a huge amount of money. It seems wholly inadequate. It seems like that you had to be spending more money than $120,000 a year to maintain a system of hundreds and hundreds of boxes, which you monitor.
No, you're talking about
every other day basis.
$120,000 a month, not a year. I mentioned that our projection was to give the schools $10,000 a week within 6 months. That's, is not $120,000 a year.
$500,000. Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Those are all the requests we have on. So we're going to close the public hearing on this item, at least on the first reading, and return to the council. Mr. Johannesson.
Yeah, thank you. Without getting into the issue of the different charities, I think, we've got a legitimate interest to look at these things in the blight aspect, to make sure they're well maintained and not become a problem, and also to try to help protect property rights of people who aren't here that may have these things put on their properties. But I'd really like to explore if there's another way, because I can understand a property owner. I mean, we've had difficulty just dealing with property owners on other things we're doing in West Sacramento, getting a hold of these people and not being responsive. And, without getting into the merits of this particular charity or not, it seems a little bit onerous to maybe have the property owner be involved. We need to have some kind of property owner or designee, someone that we could get on the hook that use is proper on that property. I think that's probably the main issue here. So whether that's a manager, and if there's any change of manager, they have to get a new one, or whatever the process is, it seems like we should be able to overcome that issue, which it doesn't sound like there's a dispute on any of this at this point. So I wonder if we could maybe work in that direction, maybe at least address the one concern that was expressed.
I personally have I understand. I don't think I agree for a couple of reasons. One is this specific organization aside, although I have concerns about it, obviously, from the questions that were raised, and it's ubiquitous. This is the main. It is the main. Although we're adopting a general ordinance, this is the organization that has is the main player in this market. And even when I recall, a decade ago, putting putting some old clothes in one of these boxes, and I just assumed because of the green color and the words on that box that I was giving to a charity that was equivalent to a local one. And it's been clear from that I and many others may not have been accurate in that judgment. And we are in the business. We do have some consumer protection responsibilities in our municipal ordinances to that extent, especially if there's a diversion from other charities. But even that aside, 11 boxes already is not a trivial matter, and to me there ought to be, that's more than enough, right? We don't need to have a box that at any moment you feel like you don't have to walk more than a half a block to get to a donation box. And so for me, it's not a public policy goal to get to a point where there are 100 boxes in West Sacramento or 50 boxes in West Sacramento, even if all of the money was going to charity. We just don't need that. As a pure land use matter, that's not an objective. I don't want to make it easier to get to a box on every corner, personally. And so having some baseline requirements which are the same as every other jurisdiction in the region, and so you have organizations know that there's one set of rules they have to play by. Whether they're across the river or here, you don't have to figure out, if I'm here, then, I can get whoever happens to be working the counter at the auto parts shop to not, whatever 19-year-old is there right now, who's the manager on duty. I can just get them to say yes, and that's just a level of. I don't think we need to make it that easy. I get what you're saying. If it was an objective we were trying to achieve, then I would absolutely agree. Maybe there's a different way to do this, but I think the process that we have is not so onerous that you can't do it, because we have it's happening in the rest of the region, and it's allowing for there to be plenty of these boxes already on the ground, and that's without regard to the charity itself. I mean, I actually wish this ordinance were much stronger. The language the only language that's in here is that the group is qualified to solicit donations, right? We don't have any standards about and can't have persistently failing grade from an independent auditor or philanthropy that says that none of the money's going to charity, or that can't have a pending indictment. We don't have any standards like that. It's just you have to be qualified to accept donations. That's a very low bar. If it were just me, I would strengthen it. But I think having an ordinance that's consistent across the region is a measured approach, is a sensible way to go. Even though I think as a mechanism, what you're saying would make sense if we wanted to see a lot more of these boxes hit the ground in the community. Other discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree. I guess I agree. I don't want to see them all over the place. I don't know if 11 is enough, or I know that I know where I drive regularly. I see them more often than I probably want to. So it just kind of has a sort of visual clutter for me that that's just not where I want to be. That's not where I think what we're trying to get to. So I think putting a limit on them, whether or not it's the 400 foot within one another policy, I don't know if that's the practice that we need to get to. It just seems like there are certain areas where they're concentrated. So maybe spreading them out. So maybe having a number is a way to go if we're going to go down this path. I don't know if the 400-foot rule is necessarily the best way to go. It may be. Somewhere between, and I understand the struggle with getting a property owner, but I think all the onus goes back to the property owners. I mean, everything we do goes back to the legal owner of that property for everything we're trying to do here. As difficult as it might be, it might seem like a bar that is unattainable or unreachable for purposes of placing a metal box on their property. But frankly, for everything we do here in the city that needs to be done legally, that's how we kind of do it. We have to go to the legal property owner to get things done. We don't just sort of say, well, whoever's there, whoever's managing the property has the authority to do whatever they want with the property, with that parcel. So. I'm more inclined to force that issue a bit more and to say, you know what, the property owner needs to be aware that this is what's happening and this is the use, this is what's happening on the property. It might not be an ordinance that's conducive to the kind of practice that you're proposing, but I think at least as a starting point, I'm not convinced that it's going to kill your business. And frankly, if it reduces the number of boxes in half, I still think that's $5,000 a month that you're talking about versus the 10 that you mentioned earlier, and that's a significant amount of money. So I don't know if I've helped add any clarity to what you're proposing, but those are my initial thoughts, at least for this go-round.
Mr. Kristoff?
Yeah, my original thoughts were pretty much along the same line. I do think that the property owner is responsible for his property, his or her property. And so, I mean, that's where the ball's gonna lie long-term. It's going to lie with the property owner. You can have a manager, you can have somebody that says, oh, sure, put it in, but it's not their property. And so, I mean, I think that there's an issue there that really needs to be feathered and really worked out. And also, I think that the 400 feet from each donation box really is in very close proximity to each one of the boxes. I would, if I was going to change the ordinance, I would probably take that to a much larger level. But at the same time, I mean, I think that all of these other cities have passed this particular ordinance, and I think that the mayor's comments on it should be at least similar to all of the surrounding cities. That seems to make things a little bit easier to work with. I think that I would go ahead and support this particular ordinance. And I think that the key points are not onerous at all. I mean, I think that they really work. I understand the first one's a little tricky, but at the same time, I think that property owners' rights, and if something were to go wrong or if something were to happen, first place we would knock would be the property owner's property itself and who owns the property.
Mr. Mayor, if my recollection serves me, the League of California Cities, after the governor had signed this bill in 2010, the league came back and said that for those cities that had already adopted unattended donation boxes, go back and look into your ordinance and make sure that you have a provision in there that requires property owner authorization. So in this instance, we could, if an organization is interested in having a donation box, they can get a letter of authorization from the property owner, which we don't think is onerous, but that's what we require on all the other permits that we process. And also, there's some concern about the spacing. 400 feet might be too close. You're interested in expanding that to, you want to go 1,000 feet?
Is the 400, to Mr. Christopher's mind, is the 400 the standard
That's what,
in all the other
yes,
ordinances?
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, to be consistent, I mean, I personally would make it 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. If we were proposing this ordinance, I would ask the council to look at least 1,000 feet. Since all of the other cities and entities that have an ordinance similar to this, I can live with 400 feet. And then the other part of that becomes, what happens to the goodwills of this world? I mean, we take our things and pack them up, put them in a box or in a bag or something, and take it over and drop it off. And I assume that there's not going to be competition in this field. I mean, I don't want 2 or 3 boxes every 400 feet from 3 or 4 different vendors. So but at the same time, we'll just have to see what happens and what shakes out. But I mean, I can live with the 400 feet, but personally, I'd take it to 1,000 feet.
Great. All right, any further discussion? Is there a motion on the first reading? Mr. Christoph?
Boy, okay, yeah, I can, I would move that we waive first reading and read by title and number or only, ordinance 12-4, and a ordinance regulating unattended donation boxes, and along with various, the components that staff had talked about.
Those, which components?
Well, that would be, the one component she talked about is getting written permission from the property owner?
Oh, that's already in there, though.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, because that was state law.
Okay. All right, is there a second? All right, it's been seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Villegas. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. So this item, the second reading adoption of ordinance 12-4 will be scheduled for March 7th. All right, item 8 is a public hearing to consider community development block grant funding priorities for 2012 and to close out CDBG grant number 8 and SDBG 4765. Oh, sorry, 808 SDBG 4765. Ms. Collis?
Ms. Louise Collis is going to present this item.
Good evening. The State of California Department of Housing and Community Development receives Community Development Block Grant Funds, known as CDBG, from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and then distributes the funding to small cities such as West Sacramento through an annual competitive grant process. This year, the city will be eligible to apply for up to $2 million to fund up to 3 separate CDBG eligible activities. And we may also submit applications to the Economic Development Over-the-Counter Program for up to another $3 million in assistance to businesses that create or retain jobs. The city recently completed Grant 08 STBG 4765, and a public hearing is also required to review the final grantee performance report. The city must conduct 2 public hearings before submitting a grant application. We are here this evening to ask the council to conduct the first hearing, which the state calls the design phase hearing, to receive comments from residents regarding projects to be considered for CDBG applications this year. It should be noted that federal CDBG regulations do not allow final funding decisions to be determined at this initial design phase hearing. We anticipate holding the second hearing for approval of actual activities for funding applications on March 21st. CDBG funds must be used for projects that benefit persons from low-income households, that eliminate slum or blight, or that address an urgent community need such as an earthquake or flood. This year, the state allows CDBG applications for the following activities: homeownership assistance, housing rehabilitation, public improvements, that would be infrastructure like streets or sewer, the construction or rehabilitation of public facilities, such as child care centers, shelters, or healthcare centers, operational funding for public services, such as youth programs, senior programs, or homeless programs, business assistance loans for job creation activities, assistance to income-eligible micro-enterprise business owners, and finally, planning studies in low-income areas or that lead to CDBG-eligible projects. Although specific activities may not be identified for the application this evening, the council may indicate priorities for funding applications. And as noted in the staff report, the following priorities are recommended for 2012 CDBG funding applications. Number 1, submit economic development over-the-counter applications if a strong business project is identified. 2, planning studies in support of private and public investment in the Tower Bridge Gateway and Washington neighborhood areas. 3, infrastructure in support of catalyst projects in the Bridge District and the Tower Bridge Gateway. 4 would be business loan fund and microenterprise technical assistance. And finally, 5, projects that support implementation of the Yolo County Homeless 10-year plan conducted with CDBG funds several years ago. We ask that the council receive public comment on applications for the coming year and then continue the hearing to March 21st for review of the grantee performance report for grant 08 STBG 4765. That concludes my presentation. Should you have any questions?
Questions at this point? All right, then we're going to open the public hearing on item 8, and we have one request to speak, and that's by Mr. Lowell.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. William Lowell again for the record of West Sacramento. And I was wondering if this, instead of closing this out, maybe it's too late to consider investing since the calendar year has passed, but if it's reallocated for this year or whatever, maybe we could consider using some of that grant money to relocate some of those signs at the fire stations to let people know more adequately where's a safe place to drop off a newly born so that they can see it from all different directions, as well as other signage that the cities of Davis and Woodland have that the fire departments conduct, they oversee the special events, but in so doing, they have to close off certain roads at certain times. So again, the signage and stuff could possibly be financed that way. And also, some of our older streets, as you know, do not have adequate storm drainage, and so maybe some of those could be modified to cause that effect to take place. Like I know in front of my house, now that I put up the argument over a year ago for the folks up the street from me, well, they got their problem taken care of, and now mine's the lowest spot in that block. So I get dropped off when it's raining, and if my chauffeur or whomever is not aware of it, well, I open the door and I find myself stepping out in a big puddle. So, and let's see. So there's one other one here. Oh yeah, why can't we, if we have to apply for a grant or if we can do it in-house, let's use some of that grant money to improve the acoustics here at this city hall as well as at the older city hall in Woodland, if they'd use their money or county money or whatever, so that the audience can hear what you folks are saying, as well as like they can over in Sacramento. And ironically, when I go to regional transit meetings, when they get up and talk or speak from their positions, it's usually too loud. And it boggles my mind as to why we can't solve those problems. And once we can say we've accepted sound advice. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lowell. With that, we're going to close the public hearing on item 8. Return to the council. So just and with respect to issues right in the public hearing, the community development block grant funds are competitive applications. So we don't, we're, in addition to figuring out what are our most compelling and critical needs, we also have to be very attentive to what does the state and the federal government want to fund. And so this is a mix of both high priorities that we've identified and high priorities, but only high priorities that we think are going to score well. And these funds have to be used to support improving the employability, the economy, and the living conditions of the poorest parts of our community, the poorest parts of America, and the poorest parts of our community as well. So you're out of luck, Mr. Lowell, in both ways. So we can't. This fund can't be used to get better speakers or microphones for City Hall, and in most cases, it's not eligible to be used for capital projects in the State Streets neighborhood because it's not poor enough. So this item is about matching up both our needs with what the resources can be used for, based on the state and the federal rules and their scoring criteria. And this item's been to both the Economic Development Advisory Commission and the Housing Advisory Commission as well. And within the constraints of what Ms. Collis described in terms of we can't make a final decision on any specific activities tonight, we'll turn to the council for discussion. Mr. Christoph?
Well, I can start. You know, I think that everything you've identified, Louise, is pretty much on target, and I think that this makes for a pretty decent application. The only one that I am concerned with is the 10-year homeless year plan. I'd really like to better understand the 1.5 million to assist with the Broderick Christian Center. And maybe we will get to that when we do the retreat and start to prioritize what are the most important things that we should be working on within the city of West Sacramento. And is this really one of those things? So, you know, it's something that I'm a little dubious of. I have some concerns.
Mr. Johannesson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think the priorities are right on with this list of 1 through 5. But maybe to address Mr. Christoph's issues, we have significant money that's going into the Washington neighborhood in terms of trying to develop that into what is going to be a living waterfront entertainment district and offices and housing and a number of other things. In addition to the Tower Bridge, Gateway, and the Bridge District, which are really, you know, until we have some uptick in housing, is really going to be where, I mean, I believe West Sacramento is going to be for the next 10 years in terms of new urban growth. One of the issues we're going to come up with fairly quickly, particularly when we look at the Indian Heritage Center and the development of that parkway, is we're going to be displacing people on the river, and this will happen fairly quickly. So we need, at some point, need to consider, you know, what we're going to do about that. Is it going to, we're going to have people displaced, and we'll have to figure out what to do about that. You know, in terms of the sheltering or exactly what this homeless solution would be, that's still really up in the air, and what capacity or function Broderick Christian Center has in that. I know there's discussions going on about that, but you know, it's nothing is, I don't think, it's decided. There's no real direction at this point. But what this will allow us to do is actually have money to be able to come up with a solution, whereas without this, you know, it could be 2 or 3 years down the road before we pick up this issue again, and by then we really would want to have the homeless situation in Washington handled. If not, the marketability of that area is going to probably not be as good, and as Sacramento starts closing down its areas, we're going to have this, it's going to be a problem that's happening. So, you know, I think in general, the staff has done a good job at looking at the priorities, and these things are very fundable. I think each of these are, I think, particularly the anything that deals with homelessness and transitional housing and keeping people out of homelessness and just using a shelter more as a stopping point to get them back into housing, I think are now very top priorities of both state and federal government. So I think these would score well. So, you know, I know we're going to be talking about priorities in the next week or so, but we do have a timeline, I think, that we need to do this to get this grant application in, and I think if we miss this opportunity, it could be next year or the year after that before we have another opportunity to do this, which, you know, it wouldn't be the end of the world for a lot of people, but for a lot of people it could be significant, and it could affect our ability to really do what we want to do on the riverfront.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Luis, Can you help me understand, just follow up on the prior comments a little bit better about what would the 1.5 million do? I mean, I heard it could be used for money for a solution, but it would seem to me you'd have to have at least a somewhat thought out plan to apply for the money. Or is it so open that you can do whatever you want once you have the money? Or is that already determined in your proposal?
To score well, you need to have a solid plan. You need to show, if you're going to do construction, you need to have plans, you need to have cost estimates, you need to show that the funding, all the funding sources are in place, because in the affordable housing world and the homeless world, you never fund something totally with one source. There's always a multiple layers of funding. If you don't have all those in place, you need to have at least a plan of what your approach is. You know, we're going to get CDBG funding this year, and then 6 months from now, there's this other grant application coming out that we're going to apply for. So you need to, if you don't have all the pieces in place, you need to have a significant number of them, and you need to have a plan for getting it all together, because they don't want to fund projects that are going to fall apart in the end because they couldn't finish that funding plan.
I'm not sure if you answered the question. So let me ask this. So this would bind us, moving forward with your recommendation this evening, it would somewhat require us to apply jointly with the Broderick Christian Center for this money, and this money would be designated for a shelter? Is that kind of where it's headed?
The priorities this evening would not necessarily say that we're going to submit an application for funding for Broderick Christian Center.
Okay. Okay, so let me just.
But
yeah.
some direction from the council at some point is going to be needed to say that that's your interest, or, you know, I mean, there's other organizations that could help us put together a shelter, or we could apply for some of these other priorities. We can apply for 3 activities. There's 5 priorities on the list.
Okay. I guess that's what I want to do, is my preference is to preserve our options. I mean, I think we're all interested, I think everybody here this evening is interested in doing something. I don't know necessarily if we all agree or if we have a consensus on what that something is. I think in my opinion, there needs to be further exploration of models and opportunities and things that we want to do. I'm not convinced that just moving forward on a shelter is really the only thing we can do. It may be one of a series of things we want to do, but I just want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position where we're obligated to partner with anybody at this point, because I think most of what we do and we've been successful at is being careful and prudent and strategic in our, going forward. And I think this is an issue that, all over the country is being struggled with, and I certainly don't want to jump to any conclusions prematurely. So I just want to make sure we have a thoughtful conversation about what this is going to look like, and based on what you're proposing here, I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly.
The grant application is due April 6th, so we are on a fairly short timeline for making those decisions. This project was brought forward both by Broderick Christian Center, and there have been discussions with a number of faith-based organizations in West Sacramento who are advocating, as you saw, Don Bosley was here representing that group this evening, advocating that homelessness be addressed.
Right, but I also heard in his testimony that there are a series of other models and examples, and I think he said there are other models, and I think he's right. There are other models at work and other opportunities for homeless solutions. I didn't hear anybody say that it had to be a shelter. And again, I'm not saying it's not. I just want to make sure we've explored that thoroughly, and I just want to make sure we're not putting ourselves in a position where we are going down a path without having had the conversation.
I agree with everything that's been said, actually, by all 4 my colleagues. I think I would like to see a homeless component as in our priority set, but I don't know what the activity is. I understand what you're trying to do in the agenda item, and everybody comes to these issues from different points. I was almost offended by the notion that we would be doing this, though, as a way to facilitate riverfront development. I mean, that's not. I mean, I get that corollary effect, But it's not about, for me at least, it's not about that. It is about the human stories that Mrs. Phelps and others have told us, and that we've all heard and seen and experienced, whether it's friends or family or others that are either going through, that are now homeless or have gone through, intermittent periods of homelessness. It's that human factor, and it's the neighbors who are grappling with the effects, the consequences for their own safety and their own areas because of the encampments. I mean, we've got both. Those to me are the two critical issues. I'm not really trying to anticipate how to make the world better for development in terms of dealing. I am, but not in terms of the solving the homelessness issue. So I do personally think, and we have said before, both in our participation in the Yolo County-wide work and through Mr. Johanneson's participation there, that this is an area that we want to solve. It's a huge challenge. I mean, to be perfectly blunt, we say the homeless, but it's such a diverse group of different kinds of people in different situations with different expectations and aspirations, and I've watched as that's completely tanked virtually every initiative on the Sacramento side of the river on this issue. I want to solve the problems that we've heard about around folks who are dealing with a foreclosure or a job loss and are in a state of homelessness that they don't want to be in, and they need our help to solve. I'm not interested in solving the problems for folks who want a different kind of a lifestyle and want to be able to camp on the waterfront. That's not my, or anywhere. That's not a place I want to go. And I've watched this debate in Sacramento be about both, as the public sector tries to solve one problem, but the response from the advocacy community is we don't want that solution. We don't want more beds. We don't want shelters. We want you to authorize camping. And I'm not going there ever. It's public land. It needs to be available and enjoyed by all, and it needs to be safe for people to do that. So I'm not going there, and if we don't have a path to solving the problem that brings people together, and at the end they say, yes, that's the solution, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I don't want to spend our resources and our time going through what the other side of the river and communities across the country have gone through around this issue. So we need, my hope all along has been that the work that's been going on through the coalition that we joined would be bringing not just the governments together, but the homeless advocates to say, yeah, we do this is the answer, and we will join you in saying to folks who are there because they believe in a different lifestyle, get off the public property. If we don't get to that point, then I'm interested in doing this, just to hobble together a little solution here, or somebody comes to us and says, you have to do this because something must be done. Something must be done, but we need to be doing the right thing and something that's smart. And I'm not sure that the Broderick Christian Center proposal is the right one. I'm not convinced yet on the management of how that would work and exactly how that would be operated effectively for the community and for the folks that would be there. But if we're going to do it, if we're going to overcome the skepticism of folks like our colleague around some of these issues, it has to be done perfectly, right? It has to. We have to operate. If we come up with a meaningful shelter, we have to be able to not just think it's probably going to work out okay, or that the management entity is going to be is probably pretty solid, because the next day we're going to have to explain not just to Mr. Christoph but to everyone else in the community, yeah, this is something you ought to be proud of. We're doing the right thing in this community, and it's good for your friends and family in the community and for the neighborhoods too. And I don't know that what we've seen yet from the Broderick Christian Center is that answer. From just the initial feedback that we've gotten and our experience in the past, to be quite blunt. For me, I would like to see a number 5 here that is a strategic implementation of the homeless plan in a way that advances what we want to see happen in this community. And I understand that we've not been clear about what that is because of this tension about not getting it wrong. But I don't want to just accidentally fall into the Broderick Christian Center shelter idea just because we don't have a better idea. We need to come up with the right ideas, and it may be that, it may include that, but I don't want to start from that and then build something off of it. I want to start with given what we've already said about our strategy and with the rest of our strategic plan, what's the right solution, and how do we build a CDBG proposal off of that? If you can do that by the April deadline, then I'm all for it. But it has to be of that caliber. Mr. Johannesson.
Yeah, I think, the conversations that the 3 meetings or so that the group has had basically have expressed all these concerns. And they are also looking at some type of plan that's not just continuing the enablement of that population, but actually provides access to social services, it provides access to drug and alcohol counseling, and to really, there seems to be no appetite to just do something. The appetite is to find a solution that's actually going to help homeless become not homeless. And that's either interdiction before they become homeless, which is what this rapid housing, with a 10-year plan, the whole thing is to get people from becoming homeless in the first place, and then once they're homeless, to get them out into housing as quick as possible. Shelters are, I think, of the past. I mean, they're a necessary component of the spectrum. But I think what's going to happen, and there has been this discussion about a strategic plan, it just hasn't been formalized to the point where this group has had that. And I think that would be the next step for that discussion to happen. Because I think at least the discussion so far has been totally on the same page with what everybody's saying here. We've used, for example, Wayfarers in Woodland as an example of how well a shelter could be run that really is actually looks nice in the neighborhood. It basically will shield, it has a place where people can go in, you don't have people mulling about, and it really is an enhancement of the neighborhood. So there are models out there. The last 2 meetings we've had someone from Home Base from Oakland come in and talk about models, strictly models. And that's a company or an advocacy firm that is up and down California, I think into Oregon and Washington too, that really deals with how communities develop homeless plans. So, at some point, we'll have to have that conversation if the council wants to move forward to really look at something that I think is going to meet all council's expectations.
All right. Anything else? Did you get the feedback that you needed for this stage? All right. Okay, thank you. Brings us then to, excuse me, item 9, which is, I'm sorry. So we need to formally continue the hearing to March 12th to receive comments.
21st. To March 21st, and if the council desires, provide an approval of the priorities. You may defer your approval of the priorities if that's your wish. That's not a CDBG requirement. That's what we do locally, so that would not affect our ability to submit a CDBG application.
All right, I think you've heard enough contingent feedback on the priorities that it may not be advisable for us to formally adopt the 5 priorities, because priority number 5 is not clear. This stage is not clear enough. It is, yeah. So we will continue to March 21st, the hearing to receive comments on the final GPR, on the GPR. All right, item 9 is consideration of request from Sacramento County Airport System for credits from the West Sacramento Economic Development Treatment Capacity Bank.
Yes, thank you. In connection with the airport expansion, the airport connected to the regional sewer system, and we've received a request from the airport director for assisting with meeting that obligation by contributing some of the credits that we have along with the other cities and jurisdictions in the district so that they won't have to have that same direct cash contribution. The theory being that it's a regional economic development asset, that all the jurisdictions within the sewer district benefit from the regional airport, and that a contribution there would be a regional contribution and not specifically any individual city. I would point out that our existing policy doesn't really contemplate this kind of use, so this is really a request for the council to vary or deviate from their existing policy. I also would note that you received a memo this evening that clarifies that we hadn't really calculated the value in the context of how the airport was treated, and so it's really more like $65,000 value if we were to grant 10 credits as opposed to the 28,000 that we suggested in the staff report. I would note that we've made requests of a variety of groups, including our friends at SACOG, to recognize the regional benefits of the port. This is analogous to that, I would say. And so the general direction here from other cities has been to contribute in some proportion to the amount they've had. The outliers there are the city of Sacramento, which has a lot of credits and have contributed a smaller percentage than some others, although in number a pretty sizable amount. But most have been hovering around 5% of their credits. The other exception, of course, would be the district itself, which is contributing a substantial amount, more than a third of their remaining credits would be going toward this. The county's contribution of 200 credits is contingent on getting a match from the cities. And so, and as it's laying out now, it appears there will be that number. We will be able to achieve the 800 plus credits that the district needs. That doesn't mean that the district doesn't pay any money. They would pay, if they get all the credits they've requested, they would still pay $750,000 toward that credit, that connection fee. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions you might have. The recommendation here is that we match the general direction of the other cities at about 5%. And the council is free to authorize anything from 0 to any amount that we have.
Up to 194, huh?
We could all the way, yeah. You could really only make a regional statement if you wanted to.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Villegas, this is your district. Did you want to open the conversation?
No, I don't. It's difficult because it's been built. It wasn't sort of thought in advance to ask. I mean, it's kind of after the fact, which is a bit unusual. We had to go back and the way the request came forward was kind of clunky. And it is what it is. I mean, they did a beautiful job. I don't think anybody questions what they've done at the airport. And I know that it's a regional asset. There's no question about that. Our residents use it as much as everybody else. It's just that these are precious credits. We have very few. We had already talked about how we wanted to use them. So the request came in, and we were kind of like, well, how does this compare to what everybody else is doing? And we had to do a bunch of research to try to figure out, okay, well, what does everybody have? What are the different jurisdictions without the region? How many credits do they have? How many are they using? Combined with the whole conversation that we're having at the regional sanitation district about, getting these credits off the books because they're increasing in value, and that's going to complicate what is already a very complicated, very expensive venture here the next 10 years with a $2 billion expansion. So it just was kind of weird the way it came forward. I don't, when staff tried to figure out how to proceed with this, I didn't really have a suggestion other than to just figure out what everybody else was doing and try to be a good partner here, a good partner in our airport. So contributing something makes sense. I don't know what that number is. Trying to stay within what I think other folks are doing probably makes sense. It's all relative. We have the least amount of credits on the books compared to everybody else. There are certainly, other needs in our community that we could use them for. So that's what I would offer.
Other comments? Mr. Christoph?
Yeah, I guess the problem that I see as far as West Sacramento is concerned is we have so few remaining credits. If we had more credits, then, I can see approval of 10. I wouldn't really have too much of a problem with it. But there are things out on the horizon as far as the city of West Sacramento is concerned, as far as the Bridge District, as far as some new businesses like Nippon and other businesses that are seriously exploring some of the industrial properties and some of the things that we've been in contact with. And so, and I realize that these are highly coveted credits. But at the same time, I want to be, and I think it's important that we do contribute to the region. I mean, I think that, we're part of the region, but I just don't know if I don't know if 10 credits is an appropriate figure. I would look at, maybe 4 or 5 credits, something like that. Probably similar to what Folsom is doing, because Folsom is putting 2.4% or 3%, whatever their figure is. But they're in the same boat in some respects that we are. They've got a couple big projects out there that are starting to get proposed, and there just may be, and I don't know if there's going to be, but there may be some development opportunities. And we may have an opportunity to, use these credits for job creation and other kinds of things within our community, just as I think the city of Folsom is looking at too. So I would try to reduce it, but at the same time, I still think it's important that we be part of the regional atmosphere that we're in.
All right. Yep. I'm not for it at all. I understand this is not a make or live or die issue to me, but we have, for our own needs, we've already prioritized these credits for what our citizens has identified as a central quality of life issue, which is the development of our restaurant sector, which we do not have. There are more restaurants in the airport than there are in parts of our city, and our need for the economic development and the quality of life that these credits are intended to support is significant, and it is a clunky mechanism. So, the rest of our county, which uses the airport as much as us, right? Davis and Woodland use the airport just as much as us, but they don't happen to be in the sewer district. So only those of us that are in the district are asked to pay, even though it is a regional asset for a region that extends far beyond the boundaries of the regional sanitation district. These credits they're worth this much now, but they'll be worth a lot more once the district board raises all the rates, and they will and those increases, as we've talked about before, are going to create significant barriers to small businesses. Fortunately, the eatery, which is the kind of restaurant we want to encourage, is moved into a prior food facility, but that we don't hope that will only be putting restaurants where there used to be restaurants. We want to have more, and given the likely structure of rates, connection fees that will be coming out of the district, that's going to pose a significant challenge for small businesses, for restaurants who want to start up. It's already extremely difficult to make a restaurant work, and not having these credits available will pose a significant challenge in that regard too. When we did Rayleigh Field, which was a significant regional asset, we didn't get anybody else's credits for that regional project. We haven't gotten credits for the port. We haven't gotten any direct financial support for the port. Yes, the region has agreed to make the port a priority for regional transportation funding requests and what have you. We've done the same thing for things related to the airport and to the intermodal as well. And we've been strong supporters of those regional assets in that way. But sort of these direct cash contributions from the rest of the region, to me, it represents a whole new frontier, which if we're going to go in that direction, we ought to have a conversation with the rest of, well, okay, is the arena next? And is the port after that? And we haven't had that. And even if, it's the 10 credits, but it's also the fact that the district is going to be devoting, a third of its credits, and we are the district too, right? So even the district's contribution is already our contribution. Our property owners, our residents are the ones that support the district in a financial way. So it's not as though if the district were to do any match, any of that match is partly coming from West Sacramento. So I'm a fairly vocal regionalist, but I just don't think this is the right path for the region to be going down in terms of a way to deal with regional assets and regional amenities. Even though I enjoy the airport and think they did a terrific job, I think we need to retain these credits here. And the last piece is, frankly, if I were to support it, I would not support more than 3. Of credits, because that's the number you would get if you applied 1.9%, which is what the city of Sacramento, which is the primary beneficiary of the airport, is applied to its credits, of which it has 20 times as much as we have. You know, if Sacramento's not the largest city in the region and the most, you know, is not prepared to do its appropriate share, I think they need to get the message that the rest of the region is supportive, but they have a leadership role to play, and that they're, you know, if they're backing away from it, how could they possibly ask us in another county to step forward and you know, support it at a higher level than them? So, I mean, I understand the comments about making the number lower, and I agree wholeheartedly, and would make the number in this particular case a 0. So, Mr. Johannesson?
Yeah, I would agree that, you know, there's got to be a better mechanism to do this. The airport and the jurisdiction around is in a much better position to be able to raise business and raise the money in other ways to be able to support what's going on there. And, you know, frankly, we're playing catch up with all these other regions in terms of restaurants and the things we're trying to target. And if we, you know, if we start weighing it down from 10 to 3, well, 3 is really nothing, so why not just go to 0? You know, and so I don't think it's really.
I agree. I'll go to 0.
Yeah, go to 0, and because I do agree that we are paying for it already as being part of the sanitation district. I just don't see, you know, there's other ways that we can help. There's other mechanisms that we can support in the region to help support the airport, which is a regional asset. But, you know, we're really playing catch up here to get restaurants and the targeted business we want. And the 10 credits, you know, what was it, 7 between the 2 restaurants, Wicked West and Eagle Cafe. So that's basically 2 restaurants worth of credits we'd be giving up in that, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas?
Thank you. It's helpful. We haven't had the opportunity to have this conversation, and as I said, it's a clunky process. You know, I sit on the district board, so I've had some insight as to kind of what these credits look like now as we're trying to figure out how to, you know, finance this 10-year plan. You know, one of the things that we're contemplating is kind of a policy, adoption of some sort of policy that will instill a kind of use it or lose it on these credits, because they've been on the books for so long now. Their value is way beyond what they were intended to be, particularly for those municipalities that have not used them, that have just sort of let them ride. I mean, it's a pretty good ride now if you've got 1,000 of these credits. Not so much in West Sac. We've used them. We didn't have so many to begin with, but now we have, we have relatively few compared to other cities. So the policy that we're about to discuss and probably adopt in one form or another is going to force the hand of municipalities that are just sitting on these things. So part of what, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, if there are opportunities to use these in a goodwill way or in a good economic way, I would recommend that we start to think about that, or maybe take some action on that, because in one way or another, we're going to be kind of forced to use these and get these off the books, because they're just, it's too hard to manage our budget when we don't know when someone's going to decide to cash all of this in, because that means that the rest of the region, say for example, Sacramento decides to use their 4,000 credits tomorrow, that cost that doesn't get paid for by the use of those credits, the cost of that work will be borne by the district itself. So it's kind of a weird, I mean, it's awkward, because, you know, when you cash those all in, the rest of us are going to have to pay for it in one way or another. So I guess what I'm saying is I would at least be willing to, you know, as a goodwill gesture, put out match the 1.9% like Sacramento has to date. The one thing that you don't see in here, and I had a little bit of insight in, is that a lot of these credits are committed. There are a lot of commitments to use these, in part because we're going to move down a path that's going to require the use it or lose it practice. So, so for no other reason, at least to show some good faith and at least match what I think our partners are trying to do, which is to you know, figure out a way to support an otherwise clunky process, I would move that we at least contribute the minimum 1.9% as Sacramento has done, to show a good faith effort. By no means indicate that this is something we're interested in doing with other regional projects, as alluded to earlier this evening.
All right, is there a second?
Well, it's either we do, you know, a little bit like 3 credits or whatever it is. It's either that or we do nothing. I think that's what Mark said. And, you know, and the mayor's right. We are contributing already. By the fact that the district is putting 400 up there, and when the district does, we do too. And I think that the policies that the board can adopt pertaining to use it or lose it would be, if they have been using them, then they don't lose them. But if they have been sitting on them, then I agree. Then, hey, there has to be an impetus to push it along. But at the same time, you know, here we're actively out here doing, I'll just call it the right thing. And we're utilizing these credits and we're doing it. And it's certainly it's a help, it's a boost to our local businesses. So, you know, I mean, I can go either way, either 0 or the 1.9, or 2%. I really don't, you know, I don't have a lot to base it on, but, you know, it's, you need a absolute, I would say we don't have any. So, I mean, that's where I would go. But at the same time, you sit on the board, and, you know, it's important that, you know, you represent West Sacramento, and it's try to help you out too. So.
The only thing I might point out about the credit issue, the use it or lose it provision, is I would be interested, not right now, but at a later point, getting some advice from our attorney. So the credits that most of the jurisdictions have are by the grace of the district's policies. The credits that we have are by the grace of a written legal agreement with the district when we annexed. And so the district, I don't think, I'm not an attorney, but I would be surprised to learn that the district would have the unilateral ability to declare that that any of our credits expire if we haven't used them in a certain time period. But.
Yeah, I may have overstated that part of it. The idea being that it would no longer continue to accrue the value at the rate that it has relative to the cost of the hookup. So I say use it or lose it, lose the sort of the trajected value of it. I'm sorry. So it's not a lose the credit, but it's a lose the, you know, the trajectory that we're currently on.
You can see, I mean, Citrus Heights has 1,000 credits, which is a lot more than us, and they will always have 1,000. They're built out, and so I mean, a lot of the times that somebody built something there, it's going to be replacing something that was already there. So, I mean, I can see the issue from the district's perspective, and also why Citrus Heights has chosen to be so generous in this case is that they don't really have unless somebody were to build a power plant, you know, or a water plant treatment plant in the middle of Birdcage Mall, that there's really no prospect for them ever using anything approaching this. But 194 for us is it seems like a much more critical economic development tool in a world where we've been stripped of so many of our tools in the last 12 months. Yep. All right, so I didn't hear a second. Mr. Ross?
Just one, I guess one point. I'm not sure that we want to stand alone in this issue and be the only jurisdiction in the district to not contribute. I don't know what the repercussions would be. I do know that the airport has been a very cooperative player in terms of the annual support for cap to cap and other things that we benefit from. And I'm not sure that that we don't want to be a player at all is the message we want to send.
Well, for me, I mean, I regret that it has come to that point, but it's not, I mean, the airport's already done. I mean, the airport bears some responsibility for not having figured this out or consulted. I mean, this is coming to us. We weren't asked to sort of weigh in this conceptually when the discussion started. We're getting this now after everybody else is already approving it. But I mean, I don't feel like it's, like I'm doing something wrong to the airport by refusing to be backed into a corner.
No, I guess my sense would be that if it ends up that the other jurisdictions also give, as they've indicated they're recommending, and we give nothing, that will, be identified by the other jurisdictions in the region. Not just the airport, but the other jurisdictions.
Okay, let's see. Mr. Villegas, what was your motion?
3 credits.
I just match what Sacramento's doing. I mean, I don't know why, there's no reason behind why they came to the 1.9%. I'm sure there's a million reasons, but I would at least match that. And that's 3, I think it's whatever that number is.
3 credits.
Christopher said 3.
Well,
so-
this is
3 or
it,
4,
3 credits.
depending
Huh?
on it. I mean, just to multiply it out, it'd be 3 plus. It would be
Yeah,
more
right,
than-
okay. Well,
But I'm happy.
I was
Is that
also,
closer to
I also
4
was,
or-
I was also told that the city of Sacramento is going to be matching the counties?
No,
No.
the county is asking that the cities match it. So they're posing 200.
Oh, I
So
see.
long as
Okay.
the cities in aggregate reach
Okay.
200.
So they're pointing a gun at their own head.
Right, exactly.
I mean, the county operates the airport, right? So they're saying if
Yes.
you don't give
Yeah.
us your credits, we're not going to use our own credits?
Well, yeah. I'm-
Okay, well,
guessing
anyway,
that's what they're saying.
I would second Mr. Villegas's motion of 3 plus
Well, it'd be 3. If you want 3, I'd say 3.
3. Okay, 3, let's go 3.
All right.
That's what Christopher, I mean, that's what
It's been moved and
Oscar
seconded.
said.
Any further discussion? All right, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries.
Thank you.
Did she get that?
I think, yeah.
Chris, you got that?
Janet.
No?
Or Janet, I mean?
Mayor Pro Tem Villegas moved, and Mr. Kristoff seconded that we pledge 3 credits.
Okay.
And
you
that
got
motion
that.
carried unanimously. Yes, carried unanimously. All right. And Carl Mosher, the Deputy Director of the Airport System, is with us in the front row. He had been available for any questions. Thanks for being here. Thank you. All right, council calendar, Ms. Richardson?
She isn't here.
Oh, I thought okay.
That's why I'm
can't
giving
see
the
from
previous
here.
report. She's also not here for that. This is the last meeting of the month, and the last regular meeting of the month, but as you noted earlier in the meeting, we do have a strategic planning workshop. That workshop will be Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, and there will be individual meetings that the council members will attend on Monday. I wanted to let you know, too, that we'll be distributing material for that workshop, and included in that material will be some additional, a short paper on homelessness and that issue, which I think will amplify on some of the topics that were being discussed. And I think you will see that the staff is maybe coming from a more balanced location than it may have appeared in the recommendation this evening. And then I wanted to note, just for the council's benefit, remind you that I will be taking a trip immediately following the workshop for a couple of weeks in South America.
All right. Any questions on the calendar? City manager report?
Nothing additional.
City attorney report. Staff directions for members of the council. We have no future agenda item requests. Mayor Pro Tem Villegas moves and Mr. Johannesson seconds that the meeting be adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.